All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to One Soccer. I'm your host today, Josh Deming. I'm joined by Alex Gange-Ruzic. And today we have a few different topics to touch on. The first one will be the men's national team returning home, defeating Panama 2-1. We have the women's roster that just dropped that we'll go through, and we will take a look at the CPL playoff picture as all matches are available for free on One Soccer. It'll be a heck of a way to end off a very successful CPL season. But Alex, good morning over on the West Coast at 8:30 your time, right? Appreciate you get making you get up a little bit early before I head to California. But we have a lot to discuss. Yesterday's match was, I would say, frustrating is maybe one word to kind of sum it up. Sloppy in a way, but also I kind of want to focus a little bit on the mentality of this national team. The fact that towards the end of the game, it kind of looked like everything was going against Canada. It seemed like they were going to let it slip away. Things weren't going overly well. They conceded the goal. It came from a bit of a turnover, which is always a difficult way to concede. But then I just like the way that they found their heads after. They pushed on, they used their quality, they found the winner, and there was a couple standout performances. So, Alex, where would you like to begin in yesterday's match?
Yeah, I think the biggest and most important thing was just to play at home again and to win at home. I think ultimately the game itself was probably not as Jesse Marsh drew it up, probably not as the players drew it up. It was a bit sloppy. They had a decent first half. They got a goal. They were in a good position. I thought they let it get away from them a bit in the second half. Panama had all the momentum. They scored. It was a deserved goal from Panama. But then Canada made sure that it, didn't end as a frustrating draw where you're kind of like, ooh, you wanted more out of that one. They got the job done. 88th minute winner. Great way to send off the fans. Jonathan David scores, goes and dances with his pal Derek Cornelius. In a sense, we shouldn't be surprised, right? We spoke to Cornelius on this channel last week. Check that out if you haven't. And, Cornelius kind of joked about the bromance he has with David. So it's cool to see them celebrate the goal at the end. And then Moïse Bombito got to hit the drum after a phenomenal 10 out of 10 performance. At the end of the day, a result like that kind of scratches away the any sort of qualms you might have had with the less than ideal performance. And ultimately, you see a lot of good. You see a lot of what this national team is becoming, what the future looks like. And also you see, okay, there's still some growing pains. There's still some adjustments, but it's always easier to stomach and look at said adjustments when you get a win. And, now they set themselves up as best as they could in their own control for the quarterfinals. They've got a nice matchup that they'll look at and, be happy with. Suriname, it's all but confirmed, if not confirmed already. So all in all, they did most of what they needed to.
Absolutely. And guys, let us know in the chat right now. What was your biggest takeaway from yesterday? I have a bunch of talking points I'm going to go through here. I'll name them quickly, but if you guys want to add on to any of them, go right ahead. I want to touch on first Bombito, and then I want to move on to David. I want to talk about Larin. David and Larin both getting their 30th goal. I want to talk about Schaffelberg, and I want to talk about Alphonso Davies. So let's begin with Bombito. And Alex, you said it, 10 out of 10 performance. It was incredible. I had a few people message me that were at the game, and they said, Josh, like watching in the stadium actually, I think does it justice, because there's things that you don't see when you're watching from home, just how good this kid really is. Some of the things I just want to touch on right away, and we know his recovery speed is incredible, but Alex, I want to say there was like 3 or 4 opportunities where a Panamanian attacker had at least 2-3 steps on Bombito. It looked like he was gone, and his ability just to recover the ball is incredible. But on top of that, I think one of the bigger things for a younger center back is he always did it without fouling the player. And I can't remember which exact moment it was. I think it was in the first half, but the Panamanian attacker had 2-3 steps on Bombito, and he was directly behind him. And I think it's very difficult for a defender to be directly behind the attacker, find a way to get in front of him and win the ball without fouling him. But Bombito just seems to be able to have that on lock. So, I mean, we can get into other parts of his game, but like, how impressive is the speed and the ability just not to foul the attackers and put Canada in a difficult position?
Yeah, well, I think what's special with Moïse Bombito is that he's quick. He's rapid. We know that. We don't, at this point, you see the straight line speed. It's impressive when he's in full flight. But what you don't maybe realize is that he's not just like head down sprint and kind of deal with things after. There's calculation there. There's, awareness, intelligence in the way he defends. And I think there's that one example you're talking about. It was Panama. I don't think Panama, it was a very nice sequence. Like they kind of cleared it out. One of their strikers dummied it. Ball ends up in behind. Very nice play. But then Bombito, you could kind of see that it was everything started clicking and he started sprinting. But it wasn't just like sprint to the player. It's something that a lot of coaches talk about. But, sometimes when you're defending, you kind of forget it. It's like little things like if you run to the near post instead of running to the player, you'll actually get there first because the angles. You can see Bombito realizes a lot of those things. He studies a lot of those things. He just sprinted, got to a good angle where he realized he could start to cut the guy off, and then he did it. Instead of just running straight at the guy, then you try to grab him, you foul him, like you mentioned. Could be a red card, could be a yellow card. And I like that he combines these athletic abilities that he has, which are remarkable. And, it's part of what makes him so good. But he's doing it in a way where, he's using intelligence, he's using his positioning, and that's why he's winning so many duels. And it was remarkable. I think there were 3 or 4 of those situations, just completely cleaned it up. And I think that's a huge luxury to have because a team like Panama, very dangerous, could have caused all sorts of problems. And this allowed Canada to play more aggressively, to play on the front foot, to keep going after the game, even when it was only 0-0, 1-0, 1-1. And they did so knowing, okay, if anything happens, if we make any mistake at the back, for the most part, we're covered. And ultimately, it took a pretty poor mistake from Canada to concede because other than that, Bombito and by extension Cornelius were pretty flawless on the night, I'd say.
Yeah, I thought it was funny. I don't know if you had the same kind of reaction, Alex, but every time Bombito did one of those challenges, it's just fun when you watch it, like a forward make a nice move, score a goal, and you like, nice. But I was just sitting there watching the laptop, and all of a sudden, like he'd make a big play like that, and I'd be like, there he is again. Like he was sensational, and I like the way you said that. I mean, it's one thing to have the athletic ability, but then to have just the footballing IQ to put it all together and put in a performance like that is phenomenal. On top of it, you got to love his passion. And I think that's what the fans are starting to fall in love with. He made that big challenge at the end. I think he banged his chest, looked up at the crowd, fired them right up. And then I think you mentioned it as well. He got the drum at the end because his players, probably the coaching staff, fans all acknowledged what a performance he had and rewarded him with the banging of the drum towards the end in front of a good-looking crowd in Toronto. So great performance from Bombito. We will move on. We got a couple questions coming in the chat, so I will skip over David. I was going to talk about him next, but I'm going to go into Larin because of this question. If you guys have takeaways from the match yesterday, throw them in. Say hello. Let us know what you guys thought. Our first topic was Bombito, of course. Gave him a 10 out of 10 performance. Absolutely loved it. But next up, we have a question here coming from David. Says, although Larin scored, I think he's better off as a super sub. David should be the lone striker, especially when Kone is back. Kone in the cam role with Eustachio and Chouanier in the CDM role. So we can touch on if we agree on that or not in a sec, Alex. I'll go first with Kyle Larin. I thought Larin had a good match. I know it wasn't just about the goal. I thought right away in the first half, he came into this camp, and maybe I'm just overthinking it because I know he's in decent form. I feel like he's starting to feel like himself again. But there's a lot of times where he picked the ball and he had driving runs. He was trying to create. I noticed him a lot more than when he's playing one of those games where he's just completely a ghost. It was a bit of a sloppy performance in general, just the way that Panama was trying to interrupt any rhythm Canada had. But I thought Larin was at least trying to create things. I mean, he scored the goal, and it was such a well-taken finish as well, reminding me of Kyle Larin back in the Besiktas days. So I'll talk about the goal here, and I'll throw it over to you to see kind of what rating you maybe give Kyle Larin. But speaking of that first half, Canada did one thing really well, and that was their press. It's how they led to the goal. I want to give a big shout-out to Ali Ahmed. What a clever, intelligent ball to like one time put in. And then the way Kyle Larin opens up his body to take that goal, like I said, reminds me of when he was back in his Besiktas days. That was not an easy finish to have. He made it look very easy. I think it was his first goal since March, right, Alex, for the national teams. Picks up number 30. So overall, I mean, I don't know. I'd give him like a 7.5 out of 10. Like I was happy with Larin's performance, and I don't know if after a performance like that, I know you and I are always like, let's see the 4-2-3-1, and I'm not gonna pretend haven't been saying that, but I wouldn't look at this performance as a way to just completely drop Larin and go to a one striker system. Would you?
I think this, at least the good news is for Jesse Marsh and good news for Kyle Larin this, makes it easier to keep Larin in, so to speak, or at least shows you, the work Larin's put in to get to this position. Because obviously we've been seeing it with Mallorca. He's hit form lately. He's really seemed to be clicking, and it's great just to see him go over to the national team, because at the end of the day, it offers you more flexibility. If you're sitting there and when everyone's healthy, you're having debates about an in-form Kyle Larin, one who's scored a lot of goals for the national team, versus, playing Ismail Kone as a 10, including Mathieu Chouanière. That's a good thing, because I only see positives across the board. I think, maybe in the summer when Kyle Larin's struggling to score, it kind of feels like, okay, the team's struggling to score. They only, had a few goals in their first games under Jesse Marsch, right? Like, you're kind of wondering, all right, they should be looking at different avenues to try and reignite the team, whereas an informed Larin gives them more options. So I think it just shows the value of scoring, because yesterday, if you look at all the games he's played under Jesse Marsch, was it his best game? Probably not. He's had some better games, but I thought overall, yeah, like you said, 6.5, 7, because he scores, right? The goal was so key. 44th minute, well taken. Funnily enough, there's a few chances where he maybe could have done a bit more. Like there was that 2-on-1 with I think it was Jonathan David. He absolutely had to get a shot or pass off, and he didn't.
Didn't want David to get number 30.
Yeah, I don't know if he just, the angle was, the defender played it well. He wasn't able to get it onto a shooting position. That's maybe one where you want to see Kyle Larin turn that into something, but ultimately a lot of that gets forgotten because you score a big goal. Overall, he was very good in the press yesterday, and you kind of just see the positioning, the awareness he brings in that position. This was so needed for Kyle Larin. And I think what's also interesting in this battle of, who plays where, Jonathan David is settling so nicely into this number 10 role.
You're gonna take my point, Alex. I was gonna throw it right to you, but you snuck it. No, go ahead.
Well, you can't have Larin without David right now, it seems, and I think part of the reason this is finally, you maybe see it start to work over the last, this game and maybe even the last few, is Jonathan David is showing some incredible things at the number 10. Genuinely, had he not scored yesterday, I would have comfortably said that other than Bombito, he was the best player on the park. He scores, great, deserved. Like for me, I don't even, the goal was like secondary, it was almost bonus because he was that good out of possession. He was incredible. And I think that also helps because, that's kind of maybe less than in the summer where Larin and David were kind of getting in each other's way. It seems they've kind of struck a balance where Larin does his things up front and David just kind of plays in between the lines. And again, more flexibility. Now you're heading into November, and based on who's available, based on who's in form, you now have these options of, okay, at least Larin and David isn't as much of a burden up front as it might have seemed a few months ago. And you still have the flexibility of, you can go Chouanière, Kone, Eustachio. You still got Seager you haven't even seen in that mix. You can mix things up. Ultimately, more good performances means more flexibility. The same way Ali Ahmed is pushing Tajon Buchanan, the same way Jacob Schaffelberg and Liam Miller are having a fascinating battle on the left. All these things, it can only be a plus. It can only be a positive in terms of depth.
Now, maybe we just talk too much, Alex, but I just find it so funny where I'm like, all right, I have a great way to transition a question over to Alex, and then you'll just stumble into it on yourself, which is hilarious, which is what you did. But I'm going to try to reword the question I had anyways, because I was going to combine these two questions here. The first one you guys see on screen from David here, who says basically he would like to see Larin on the bench, Kone into the midfield. And then there's a question here or more of a statement here from Justin that says David has immense value in his hold-up play, also has great effort tracking back. He's amazing when given freedom to roam. And the question I was going to throw to you, Alex, was the way that, when you have an informed Kyle Larin and he's more of that natural number 9, it allows Jonathan David to play in that 10 role. And I think that's where he's at his absolute best. He had 42 touches on the ball last night when I think, and I don't know, because you and I have had this debate before, because I don't want to pretend like we haven't sat here and said, let's go 4-2-3-1. Jonathan David can play the lone striker. I'm not worried about him taking away from his game when he goes up top. But having Kyle Larin be that kind of number 9, it allows David to drop deep. And in that first half, I noticed it right away. David was on the ball all the time. There was times that he almost looked like a CDM, the way he was linking up. He's very clever with his movement, and we know he does that. And when you see him in the goal he scored, again, he comes in with the ball, and the thing, and we've seen David do this plenty of times, is when he comes to get the ball, he will link up, he'll make the pass, but then he'll continue his run. And he's a good finisher as well. And that goal was just so well taken. So my point was to go back to was, do you even want, I mean, Jesse Marsch has never really shown that he wants to not play David and Larin together. And when Kyle Larin's scoring goals and has a little bit of form being that number 9, and you have Jonathan David creating this number 10 role, I feel like it's going to be very difficult to want to change those two up, no?
Yeah, well, that's the beauty of Jonathan David. It's ultimately with David, it's all about getting him the ball a lot in between the lines. And ultimately, sometimes you have to tweak to make it happen. We've seen it at Lille before, where he hasn't always worked in every system they've done. He hasn't always paired, nicely with certain players. But when you get David in the right system, it all just clicks. And I feel like right now, he's loving playing underneath the striker. And I think, again, we have to remember it took work, because I think, again, for me, I think of Larin and David playing together against Argentina in the semifinals. And it felt like there were 4 or 5 times in that game where one of them received the ball and like literally almost ran into each other because they were so close to each other. And you're just thinking, man, this just really isn't working there. Getting on each other's toes. Larin wants to drop. David wants to drop. It's not working. But you can see the world of difference it's made for Larin to just be like, all right, I'm just going to lead the line. I'm going to get out the way. David, kind of do your thing. You see it like yesterday. There was some incredible touches, because I mean, David's awareness has always probably been his best skill, his positioning. Like, he just finds space. It's actually scary how often he's open in the game. Like, even yesterday, 88th minute, Panama knows who Jonathan David is. They'd be foolish not to know who Jonathan David is. Just watch that goal again if you want like a master class in striker's movement. Like, he picks the ball up deep, turns, plays it out wide, and he didn't like immediately run into the box. He kind of waited, saw Miller was about to put the ball in, found the space, didn't even need to take a touch, right? A lot of strikers maybe take a touch there because it was a bit awkward. Him, he probably, I bet you if you took a picture of him, his eyes were probably closed. He's done that play so many times. Boom, side net, no problem. That's David. It's all about arriving in the right places at the right times. And I think he can fit excellently in this. I've never had any doubts he can fit as a number 10. It was just all about the partner. And for a while there, it looked like Kyle Larin wasn't the partner. So if Larin can be the partner, great. Because ultimately, as we see, when Larin is scoring, he adds another layer. So it's again, it's great to see what David can do in this system. And maybe this takes some pressure off some of these guys like Tenny Oluwasi, a Theo Bair. Although I must say, Theo Bair coming off the bench did some good things, and maybe he'll be the one to watch closest in terms of the strikers heading into November. Yeah,
bit of a different profile when Bair comes on. Almost scored the goal there at the end. I think it was David who had a nice ball in, and he just didn't get enough power on it or enough. It kind of looked like maybe it could have been like a bit of a looping header, but it was a nice save at the end. I agree, Alex. Good strikers can go, with 20 touches in a game and score a goal, and you remember them scoring a goal. But I believe that Jonathan David's at his best when he's in that 40 to 50, 55 touch mark, where he's very active, when he drops, when he creates. And like, despite this game looking choppy, because it was, I always noticed David throughout this game. And I kind of had a feeling, I'm like, all right, if something's going to happen, it's going to come from David. And then that trademark goal, like you talked about, it's just so well taken. And I like the way you describe it too, because strikers, like, it's so easy just to go, full steam, because he made the pass. And if you like, I watched it yesterday. I maybe bring it up right here to show you guys as well. But Alex made a really good point. Is as soon as he makes the pass, he doesn't stand still, but he doesn't sprint like a maniac. He just really cleverly times out his run to be able to go into the box. And plus, we know David can finish with either foot, so it just makes him incredibly dangerous.
Bombito. Well, yeah, to that point, it's like, it's very Chicharito-esque. I think of him as one of the best, like, in his prime, some of the best off-ball movement as a striker. It's so tough as a defender, especially in that moment, right? I mean, you can bring up the goal if you want.
Yeah, let's do it.
We can show. We may as well.
We have the rights.
While we have...
we have the rights to it. Let's capitalize.
Yeah, I may as well. Again, this is a good chance for those who maybe don't watch Jonathan David as closely, or you're wanting to watch him with Lille. Keep an eye out for these things, because what's wild is this isn't an accident. Like, this isn't anything we haven't seen. Like, we talk about his hat trick a few weeks ago against Le Havre. he made runs like this 6-7 times. So you see here, he receives the ball, he turns, he passes the ball, pause when Miller gets it, or I guess just pause right back to Miller gets it. Like there, like just look at the way he kind of he waited till the defender came out, he opens up the space, Miller gets it, and he just times it so perfectly. It's not like a full-on sprint like you say, just there's the burst there, and then it's all right, slow things down, boom, finish, tidy. Like it's the way he arrives in the box. It creates so many open looks, and it's great for a crosser too, because if you're Miller, like it just gives you a target. So no, I love the goal on so many fronts, from the way David held it up, the way he played it out, and the way he made sure he arrived just at the perfect moment.
It's just, he makes it look easy. It's not. Like he's got one player there. That's a really good, intelligent pass. And then we talked about his run and finish. Like there's so many, it looks so easy, but it's not. That's a very difficult goal, and a very well taken goal by a striker who's feeling in form right now.
It's fantastic.
But I'm just gonna watch it one more time, because Bombito and David were the headlines. But it's such a clever goal. It really is. And we're gonna get to Liam Miller now as well, because we touched on Kyle Larin a little bit. But Alex, we talked about a few times going into this camp that David and Larin have not went into a camp feeling very good at the same time. Like both, great form, feeling good. You're expecting a couple things. But another part about Kyle Larin is that I'd say the two Canadian players under the most heat from fans is Kyle Larin and Liam Miller, hands down. I don't know if I can even throw another player into the amount of heat that these two players get, mainly because that partnership, like you mentioned, between David and Larin doesn't always look like it works, and we have other striker depth. So, a lot of the fans, including us, are asking, change up the set shape, go 4-2-3-1, or give Tanny a chance, give Bear a chance. Another one is Liam Miller. And I've always been a fan of Liam Miller, and I still am, because he's very good, and he's been very good and consistent at club level. But sometimes when he comes to the national team, he's very direct. I think he can fit Jesse Marsh's system. He's a very energetic player. He's not afraid to take on players. But the reason I think he sometimes gets on the wrong side of the fans is that final ball isn't always there. And he makes some wrong decisions. He does really well to get in the final third, but then he makes the wrong decision. So I think the fact that he picked up an assist in this game, and then, of course, Kyle Larin scored, I think it's going to do wonders for two players who I think are right. I mean, Kyle Larin is in the starting 11. Liam Miller's on the outside looking in. And before this game started, I put out a starting 11. I didn't really think it was going to happen, but I kind of wanted to see it happen. It was basically the typical starting 11, but I had Miller in for Schaffelberg. And there was a few reasons for it. Was one, I think his club form right now is better. I think that Schaff is only really doing it at that level for the national team, which is a good argument to put him in. But I felt like Liam Miller could get rewarded. He scored a couple goals against CF Montreal in that closed door friendly. And also Schaffelberg had a little bit of time off due to the birth of his child. So I just felt like maybe this was the moment to do it. And then seeing Schaffelberg have a bit of a tough match, and then Miller come on and get that assist, I think it's going to do wonders for his confidence. So looking at the performance of Liam Miller and Jacob Schaffelberg, Alex, what did you make of it? Because Schaffelberg's been on a quite some high for the men's national team, and as he rightly should. But I like the competition on that left-hand side, and I think Liam Miller did a good shift to maybe make Jesse Marsh think about his next move for that left-hand side.
See, funny enough, I think the first person I think of is not Schaffelberg, it's not Miller, it is Marsh, because I think Marsh deserves credit for how he's handled that left side, because Miller got the first go there back in, against the Netherlands and France, and Miller was great there. Heading into Copa America, we were expecting to see a lot of Miller Davies down that left. And then Miller maybe hit a bit of a wall in Copa America. It wasn't clicking. And Schaffelberg, every time he came off the bench, he was looking great. All right, Schaffelberg, you're doing this on the bench. Here's a look as a starter. Boom, he scores some goals. It's his spot. Schaffelberg earns it. Great. What I'm liking now is that we're kind of seeing like, all right, the value of competition. Schaffelberg earns the spot. In September, he starts, he scores. Great. Now he comes in October. He can have the peace of mind of knowing he's the starter. But what's nice with Marsh is a nice balance of there's maybe not too short of a leash, but there's not too long of a leash. All right, Schaffelberg maybe struggles a bit more than he has in recent games. His touch wasn't there, just the ball wasn't sitting for him. Like Jesse Marsh didn't, leave Schaffelberg longer on the field than he needed to be. It was all right. Like Liam Miller, we know what you can do. We've seen you start. We've seen you come off the bench. Go for it. And it's important to remember what I love about the Miller assist yesterday is he had a pretty poor mistake on the Panama goal. Like the Panama goal for me, just yes, the defending was less than ideal, but when you turn the ball over in the middle of the park and create a dangerous transition moment for the other team, it's hard to be too mad at the defenders because that's football, right? Like that's why they say statistically, like most of the goals are scored directly on transition moments. It shows why you have to be managing the ball. And Miller didn't manage the ball too great on that goal. If you haven't seen it, the ball was up in the air. He tried to take it on his chest. It kind of bounced right after. There's like the aftermath of the Miller touch. Panama picks up the ball. Like that was literally it, because it kind of forced David to have to make a pass he didn't want to make. Panama catches Canada all out of position. They chop right through, score. It was a tough mistake. For me, that breakdown starts with Miller's turnover, and the rest was all just a chain effect. For him to bounce back, to keep demanding the ball, to not, because that mistake could have easily swallowed you whole. Big game at home, Panama, you just got a chance. You're literally on the field for 5-10 minutes after Schaffelberg had come off. For him to bounce back, to take the assist as well as he did. And even before the assist, Miller was growing nicely into the game. He was getting shots. He had that curler that forced a nice save. He had some other moments. That's great. And I think what we're seeing now is the value of the competition. And we've seen it at other positions, right? We've seen it when, the guys are knocking on the door like Ali Ahmed did. He'll get a look. Other guys will, Mathieu Chouanier, he'll get a look. And we're seeing that on that left side. And it provides value because going forward, he can just kind of continue to rotate through the two between a mix of form for Canada, form for club. And right now, after yesterday's game, at slight edge to Liam Miller, but I'm sure heading into November, it could very easily be Schaffelberg. And it's nice to know that those two are going to continue to battle, and it's not going to be one where they're not getting the best out of either of them.
Yeah, I mean, it's nice to have that problem when you have two players that push each other. I agree with everything you said. And it goes into the mentality as well, that point you made about Liam Miller. It wasn't just him, it's the whole team coming together to find that goal. But it's got to feel extra good when you're part of the mistake that leads to the goal, and then you do something where you've been criticized. That final ball in the final third, you come up big and put in a wonderful ball, and you get the assist in the game-winning goal. So Liam Miller's got to be feeling pretty good after this window, as well as should, well, not really as should the rest of the team. I mean, they got the win, but I think there's a lot to maybe take a look at here. Let's quickly focus on a couple other players before we get into some questions here, Alex. Alphonso Davies, I saw a lot of stuff on X of just, I don't know, there's a bit of a debate around his performance. I saw mainly that it looked like some fans were saying that, because I was just trying to find some of it. I put it under my 5 takeaways tweet, and a lot of fans were saying they didn't like, and they said maybe it was under, they said maybe it was Jesse Marsh's instruction, but they didn't like the fact that Alphonso Davies constantly bombed up the pitch, didn't focus on just playing left back, and left his team vulnerable on the counter. Do you agree with that point? I saw it a few different times, and I was meaning to ask you about it. And do you think he's responsible at all for that goal in terms of the marking the Panamanian attacker there?
Honestly, I thought Alphonso Davies was a nice role yesterday, because I think it was tactical. And I think what's nice with Richie Lary's development, and we have to remember Richie Lary last year played as a center back sometimes for Toronto FC. Even this year, he's had to be an emergency back 3 option for John Herdman. We kind of saw Larea filled the Johnston role, whereas in past years, what you got from Larea and what you got from Johnston were two very different things. And I think one of the luxuries of having Larea adapt his game like that is that I think you want Alphonso Davies to push forward. You want him to be dangerous. You want him to be more involved. That's what he's doing for Bayern, and he's doing very well. We know that. And I think it's kind of all a chain effect, because they can do this because in the past they couldn't really do this, but they can do this because they know Moïse Bombito is going to clean things up. Derek Cornelius is going to help out, and Max Crepeau. Although Max Crepeau had some rare errors on his sweeping yesterday, and he was lucky maybe not to get punished, although we rarely see him make mistakes. There's, of course, Venezuela, but other than that, he's been pretty flawless. But I think this is kind of the risk reward. Like Jesse Marsh, what's been fascinating about his system is that he clearly values some risks, knowing the rewards. Like one of the risks he takes is Canada sometimes, let's be honest, maybe presses more than they should in the first 60 minutes. The risk is that if you don't, put the game away, you can tire out and you have something happen like yesterday where they were way too fatigued. Panama scored, they had all the momentum, you're worried they might lose. But the reward is, like, if you get it right like they did against the US last month, you can be up 2-0 after the 16th minute, and it doesn't really matter how the game finishes because you're able to see it out from there. One of the risks Marsh plays with is the high line of aggression, of guys flying up the field, of wanting to push guys forward, and Davies pushing forward is one of the things he want, one of the risks. It's a fair risk because the reward is Davies being more involved in the final third. Of course, that means you might be a bit more vulnerable at times. So I didn't mind it. I think it was tactical, and overall, like, you could see the value Canada was getting from it. Because I thought Davies, when he was in his left back position, he was solid, as he's been all under Jesse Marsh. But we saw a little bit more of him going forward and really on the goal again. For me, it starts with the turnover, because I think it's probably one where Davies sees the ball go up to Miller. He's relatively unmarked. Ball's coming to his chest. He's probably thinking, all right, this is a moment where I can gamble, get forward, support the attack. He's not expecting for the ball to be turned over. The backline isn't expecting for the ball to be turned over. That's why I look at the turnover on that goal versus everyone's positioning, because you have to remember, when you have the ball, you kind of have to take those risks. You have to push forward, and it just kind of all snowballed. So, no, I like Davies yesterday, and I think Marsh is finding a good way to push him. But what, little things we saw from Davies yesterday, he was very vocal. You could tell he was, maybe at times he was almost coming off a bit frustrated, at least on the broadcast, where you could tell he was really wanting to spur his guys on, and almost to the point where he's like, guys, come on. But you're seeing that vocal leadership. You're seeing him really want to take the guys with him, and overall, I don't have many qualms of the role he's playing right now.
No, I agree 100%. I found it fascinating that I did see like 2 or 3 very similar posts touching on that exact issue. So I like to go through, the comments and try to bring some up. And that was one that caught my mind. I agree with you, Alex. I thought he's been consistent throughout his left back position under Jesse Marsh. I like when he has the opportunity to bomb forward. That's in his nature. I don't think Jesse Marsh would want him to stay back and be a defensive sided left back. It's a waste. I know. When he's got the opportunity to go forward, he's always going to do it. And I think he's very clever about it. Plus, he's got the recovery speed to be able to track back. And I do agree. I like seeing him get a little bit more vocal. The times I noticed it was when he did make that run up the pitch, and maybe a player didn't get him the ball, and he gets a little frustrated. He's like I remember, I don't know if it was Larin or Chouanier. I think one of them had the opportunity to play him through, and they made the wrong pass. And he's just like, man, I just made a 30-yard dash up here. Like that's me. And then the other time is through mistakes at the back. A couple of times we had turnovers, and an opportunity came for Panama, and maybe we cleared out for a corner or something. And that's when I saw him getting frustrated. He's like, guys, wake up. Like, this is unacceptable. But I like that. I like seeing that. That's part of the evolution of becoming a captain.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because as long as you there's a line, right? Like, you don't want to just be after your guys all game. And I think we also have to remember it's kind of the Bayern way. Like, Joshua Kimmich, right? Because he's one of the captains nowadays at Bayern. Watch him play. Yeah. He will give guys a piece of his mind. He's very blunt, very honest. And Davies has said, I think there was a great article. I think it was Joshua Cloak was talking, and Davies said, yeah, Kimmich and Neuer are 2 of his mentors at Bayern ever since he's been Canada captain. He's been asking, what would you guys do here? What would you guys do here? Neuer as well. He can be a bit of a guy that'll go after guys, and that's kind of that standard. If you want to be at the highest level, there's a mix of course, you got to be encouraging, you got to be uplifting your teammates, but you also have to be ready to just kind of have a go and be like, all right, what are we doing here? Are the standards enough? And hey, it even extends to Jesse Marsh. I don't know if you picked it up in the broadcast. There was just a moment, I made sure to highlight it in my 3 takeaways written piece, but Jesse Marsh, Canada was playing too slow in possession, and the mic picked him up going, guys, it's too effing slow. It made me laugh so hard, but I loved it because it's also Jesse Marsh. We've seen so much of him being the nice guy of, pushing these guys, having fun, being a bit more laid back. But it's also, remember, Jesse Marsh isn't scared to set the standard. He's said it many times. He wants these guys to be more demanding, to be more arrogant, to be more, just brash. And I think it's cool to see, guys kind of balance that. Okay, let's have some fun. Like, they score a winner, everyone's dancing. It's not like it's, everyone hates each other, but it's also when there's, moments of mistakes or things aren't at their best, a guy like Davies or a guy like Marsh or other leaders are addressing things.
And I like the fact that this team is getting better and better and better. which means that you can expect more of your teammates. And I just thought of another time that Davies looked visibly frustrated, and it was at Crepeau, because I very, very rarely can picture Crepeau making this many mistakes in one match, and we're lucky we didn't get punished by it. But it was one of the opportunities. I think he came out in try to sweep or keeper, and he missed it. And Davies looked at me. He's like, what are you doing, man? Like, that's like, it's not like you. Wake up. Like, I don't know. Like, it's little things like that, but I love seeing it. But we're going to go into the comments here. And Alex, I do remember this. And I do think it's funny. Have you seen?
Yeah, so they were posting that yesterday on Twitter. I was like, that's a good pull. That's a good pull.
It's just him running. Oh, I didn't even. Yeah. Okay. Anyways, all right. Let's get into some comments here. Is there any other players, Alex? Before I want to dive into some comments a lot, because there's a lot of good ones in here, guys. So if you have anything, throw it in. We're gonna switch over to you guys. Was there any other player you want to highlight before we go over to the chat here?
Just some last notes I would have said. I'll just empty them all out at once. Why not? Just quick as I can. Ali Ahmed, he wasn't as dominant as he was against the US, but I liked his mentality where in the first half he was getting fouled a lot. He wasn't getting into the game, and he still has the composure to get an assist. I really hope that assist boosts his confidence, because right now for the Whitecaps, he's doing everything but goals and assists. So getting an assist will be good for his confidence. Great to see for him, and him and Buchanan. We'll continue to watch how that battle plays out now that Buchanan's so close to his return for Inter. Otherwise, the last point, interesting. I thought Canada's midfielders kind of struggled a bit, which was new. Like, we have, especially because Choinière and Eustáquio were two of the best players of the last window. Eustáquio less so. I thought Eustáquio was quite good. I thought Choinière in particular struggled. There was that one moment where he turned the ball over and he took his yellow, and you could just see the frustration because he just knew it wasn't good enough from him based on what he's done. But I think overall they weren't at their best, and they still did what they needed to. And I think shout out to Nathan Saliba for coming off the bench, and he was excellent. I know we have some comments here, but Saliba is really offering some interesting questions, because the way he came on and calmed the game down, they were like, he came on in a moment where they're still kind of chasing the game, because it was still 1-1 when he came on, right? Like, I thought it was great to see what he was doing there in the middle of the park. So that was good to see on a night where, maybe a Choinière uncharacteristically struggled a bit compared to past matches. It was nice to see Saliba step up.
Two players I remember you mentioning before they were part of the national team, Alex, and like to me a lot, because I talk a lot and do a lot of videos, but two that have always stood out was Bombito and Saliba. And I find it very interesting because you're like, it was way before, like, this is honestly probably right when we started doing videos, like two-ish years ago. So like, they were quite a ways away from being in the Canada fold, and you always just said, like, watch these players. I'm telling you, watch these players. They're gonna be big. Bombito had his opportunity. He's now a staple in this team, and maybe Saliba is just around the corner. So definitely giving Alex a little shout out there. The other thing, I saw a comment yesterday. I was just looking for it. I can't find it. I want to just know, Alex, if you think it's true or false. And I wanted to give him a shout out because I thought it was a fair question. They said it was on X. The performance from Ahmed and Choinière didn't do them any good when it comes to Kone and Buchanan returning. Do you think that's a fair statement? Do you think that's a harsh statement? Maybe only one is true. I thought Ahmed had a bit of a better performance than Choinière, but I mean, I'd be lying if I didn't say, yeah, like out of the 11 players on the pitch, like maybe those are the two I'm kind of looking at where they were maybe like a 5 out of 10 ish, maybe Crepeau as well.
Yeah, I would say definitely for Choinière, especially with Kone coming back. Choinière, of course, it's helped that maybe Kone plays at the 10, although I'm sure Jesse Marsh is thinking of Kone, Eustáquio, David, Larin, all four of them finally back together. He's probably looking at that, and that definitely would hurt Choinière. What I'd say with Ahmed, though, for what it's worth, and I think it's something he's going to have to adjust to at the national team level, the same way he's had to adjust at the club level, hasn't taken long for opponents to realize, oh, this number 20 guy on the Whitecaps, or not on the Whitecaps, on Canada, he's pretty good at dribbling. He's pretty, he's quick. He makes things happen. Let's chop him down. Because that's the one that he just eats so many fouls. And I think you could see it yesterday against Panama. There was one point in the first half where he was almost, because Ali Ahmed doesn't really get too frustrated, but I don't know if you remember, there was a throw in and like the defender was just draped all over him, was like grabbing him by the shoulders like 3 or 4 times. Like the ref literally had to come over and like what are you doing? And the face Ahmed made was like, my goodness. Like it was that kind of night where I think credit has to be given to Panama. They were clearly like, all right, we know what this guy can do. Let's do everything in our power to try and rattle him. Because that's tough for any player to deal. You've seen it with Davies, right? When Davies gets that treatment, sometimes it can be tough for him to take over the game to the level we know he can. So I think the fact that Ahmed still got an assist despite that, yeah, it wasn't, the 8, 9, 10 out of 10 performance we saw from him against the US, but it was still, I'd say he was closer to a 6-7, whereas Choinière, he was just fighting the ball too much for being in the middle. Because, if you're turning the ball over in the middle, it's a little different, say, than out in the wing where, if Ahmed's losing the ball or if he's trying stuff, it's out in the wing. He was getting back. His press was good. I think Choinière, his mistakes were just a little more noticeable, and I think you could kind of feel that. So I would say Choinière is probably the one feeling a little more worried after this versus what Ahmed might feel.
That's fair. I thought it was an interesting point. But all right, guys, we're gonna get into some of the comments now. So you guys have any questions, get them in. Gord had one here. I mean, it kind of tied into what Alex was talking about. It said that Ali Ahmed got pushed around, had to deal with a big size difference last night. It showed. Doesn't have the strengths to deal. And Gord, I definitely would say, like, he was fouled a lot, but I wouldn't say he doesn't have the strength to deal with physically stronger and faster players, because, I mean, I know he got crunched down a lot, but he wins a lot of fouls. So I'd say it's more of, when you draw fouls like that, it's the other players can't deal with you. Maybe it's easier to chop down Ali Ahmed than it is to chop someone down who's got a little bit more muscle to them. But if he's drawing fouls, and as long as he's not just turning over the ball, I think that's a bit of a win, and that's just kind of part of Ali's game, right, Alex?
Yeah, exactly. He's going to win a lot of fouls. I mean, he's not going to be the biggest, strongest guy, and he's quick. He's a winger, right? Like, the reality is a lot of speedy wingers. That's why a lot of guys will try to chop them down and foul them. So I think the fact that Ahmed keeps on getting up, he keeps on going after guys, he doesn't lose that fearlessness. I think that maybe makes up for, a lack of raw strength that he might have versus, some other play. Like, he's not going to be Adama Traore. I don't think he'll ever be Adama Traore, but it's good to know that he'll get up, he'll take the fouls. It's not going to deter him physically or mentally from going into those sorts of duels. So it's different players, right?
Absolutely. But yeah, I wouldn't say just because you get knocked down doesn't mean that you're not physically able. As long as you're drawing those fouls, you'll take a beating, but you'll definitely impact the match. We got a question coming in here. It says, my takeaway is that Canada cannot score goals from set pieces or any distance beyond 12 to 15 yards. That is a big problem. So not really a question, more of a statement. Alex, what do you think about set pieces? I've been very vocal when Davies used to be over every single set piece that things had to change. We see Choinière over a lot of them nowadays. Eustachio still over it. Almost feels like we're missing Junior Hoylett and his distribution over a set piece. Is this a worry to you that we're not scoring from distance, or we're not creating from set pieces the way that maybe we used to?
Set pieces, I'm not worried yet, because I thought some of the deliveries yesterday were some of the best, and I think you can see the familiarity of Choinière just, being the taker, Schaffelberg being the left-footed taker. You can see that, okay, guys are getting used to that. There's less of that. I guess I'm curious to know what happens, say, next window, if a Miller starts over Schaffelberg, if Choinière drops out, what happens then? But I guess that's where you have Eustachio as an option. The delivery's getting better, and I think ultimately it's going to be little things like Bombito, you have to remember, had a great chance, like unmarked header, headed it about a foot over the bar. You're starting to see more. So I'm kind of the mind of, it's going to take time. Jesse Marsh he came in, he brought his new guys. He's working on new set pieces. Sometimes it takes a while for all that to click. In terms of the goals from distance, it's we'll have to see. That's something where Canada for a while, that's been something, and that's why they have struggled against low blocks, is that they don't have a lot of guys that will, be willing to have a go from 20-30 and to destabilize. I guess that's probably where, when Kone's back, you're going to want to see that, because, for Watford last year, that was something he really did well to add to his game. And you're looking at the options, he's probably the one who would do it the most. But I'd say it's as much a profile thing, because other than Kone, Chouanier wasn't, scoring. He did score a few worldies for Montreal, so maybe that's something you want to see him have a few more looks. But Eustachio is not really a guy who's going to be scoring a lot from distance. All of his goals for Porto are, in and around the box. Larin and David, most of them are around the box. Ahmed's not like a huge shot from distance guy. Schaufelberg has had a few bangers. Maybe you want to see him take things on a bit more. But what I'd say on the flip side, and we've seen it, one issue Canada hasn't had under Jesse Marsch is creating quality chances. Because even at Copa, I remember the Argentina games, you weren't sitting there like, man, Canada doesn't create chances. It was, all right, Canada can't finish. So I think that's at least a good news that pretty consistently through the 11 games or whatever it is now under Marsch, feels like they've created multiple quality looks every game. It's just been a matter of did they finish them or not. So that's at least they're doing the right things that are yielding pretty consistent output in that regard.
Yeah, the story of Copa America was wasted opportunities. That's just how it was. Canada had a ton of chances, a ton. And every time Tanny came off the bench, I'd say he had a grade A scoring chance that he just wasn't able to do. Kyle Larin had plenty as well. We were always creating chances. That was a huge issue as why this team made it so difficult on themselves. And now we've seen 2 really well-taken goals, and hopefully more to come. And last window we saw a couple nice goals as well. So, and then about set pieces. I mean, for me, I personally, when it comes to the Canadian pool, I think there's Junior Hoylett with his delivery. Then there's the second tier, which I have Eustachio and Chouanier in, and then some other players down the list. So if Chouanier is not on the pitch, I have absolutely no problem. I don't think Eustachio's distribution is any worse, or I think it's very similar to what Chouanier would bring, but I do think it's a bit of a difference than what Hoylett used to do. As long as no disrespect to Davies, unless it's it really calls for a lefty, I just think it's better to have a Eustachio or Chouanier over it. Because Davies is not a set piece specialist. That is what it is. But Alex, we're going to throw it back to Saliba because I think this was the comment you were talking about. I just want to show him a little bit of love that he looked very calm on the ball, reminiscent of Kone's first Canadian appearances. I just want to ask you a quick question because we've already kind of talked about Saliba. But right now, when you look at the midfielder depth chart, assuming we stick with this 4-4-2 system, Kone, Eustachio, those are your, again, I'm assuming those are your main 2. Give me 3, 4, 5, 6 if you can. In order, who do you think is going to be on deck, and where does Saliba push up the charts in your mind?
I guess in that case, you're kind of assuming Chouanier's number 3. I think Saliba right now, he's in a bit of a battle for number 4, I would probably say, just because, I think long term, I think you're looking a bit more at Seager, and I think right now it's Seager. It's hard to know where he's at because even for Hayuk, he hasn't started a league game yet since his return from injury. The fact we haven't seen him too much for Canada maybe indicates that he's still working up to 100%. But I think right now Saliba, I guess Osorio too. You can't forget Osorio is probably number 4, right? Yeah. So I'd say you'd say Chouanier, Osorio 3, 4, Saliba, Seager 5, 6. But I think what I like with Saliba is by next year, when you tell me he's number 4 or even number 3, I could see it. He has that sort of upside. What's nice with him is that you're looking at his game. There's no confidence issues at all. What he can do. He can spray a ball 40, 50 yards. What I liked yesterday is he came on. It was demanding the ball in a 1-1 game. He would get the ball. He would turn right away. He would fire a pass forward. There was a certain desire to want to push, to want to play forward. I see those things and I'm thinking, his confidence is where it's at right now. Give him a few months. I could see him climb to that 3-4. So for Saliba, I think we're kind of at a point now where he's done enough over the last month or 2 where he's going to be there in November, and hopefully we see him a lot going forward, and he can hope, maybe next year, as soon as next year, he can push to Europe and start to do some things there as well. And
I will just say things move quickly, especially it just seems like when it comes to these Canadian men's national team players. Kone is a great example. Bombito is a great example. Even Cornelius. I mean, he's a little bit older than these players, but I mean, he was in Greece not that long ago. All of a sudden he finds himself in Sweden and now Marseille. Things happen quickly with a young player like Saliba with his profile.
He's only 20, right?
I know.
That's the thing where we talk a lot about Ahmed and Schaufelberg maybe not getting moves this summer. It's a bit of a different one for them, although, Joshua Cloak was putting out some pretty interesting rumors in terms of Ahmed. I don't know if you saw, he mentioned Serie A, Bundesliga, championship for Ahmed. So we'll see if anything materializes there. But we talked a lot about Ahmed Schaffelberg. It's like, all right, they need to do this at MLS level. They need more goals and assists maybe for their clubs to help. What's nice with Saliba, he's 20 and he's a midfielder. I think teams are going to look at what he's doing. It's the same way with Kone, right? Where it's just as a midfielder, if you're doing all the right things, it can happen a little quicker when you're younger.
Absolutely. So I agree, Alex. Give it a year, maybe especially give it a Gold Cup. Maybe this Gold Cup coming up this summer. Depending on with the Club World Cup and how seriously CONCACAF takes the Gold Cup, which history shows us we don't take it very seriously anyways. But MLS guys do get a big opportunity, so keep an eye out for that, for maybe a breakthrough opportunity for Saliba at a tournament like this. We'll do a couple more questions, then we'll move on to the women's roster that was dropped. Just trying to take a look at one that can be kind of quick. I guess in terms of outside the box shooter, yeah, I would. Oh no, was that the wrong one? Where is it? Oh, there it is. Liam Miller is definitely our outside of the box shooter. He can hit him for distance. Almost scored a really nice one. And final one before we get going will be, I think Ahmed on the left, Buchanan on the right would do very well. What do you think? I mean, honestly, if you're gonna play those two on the field, I'd probably move Buchanan to the left and keep Ahmed on the right. But I do think they could work together. I just think, I mean, then it's I feel like it almost would be harsh on Schaffelberg Miller, but it just goes to our depth. Like Jesse Marsh is gonna have to figure this out. Like with every position, what is going to work? I think Ahmed has done everything possible to really push a player like Tajon Buchanan, who is playing at Inter Milan, but has not been in the greatest form for Canada in recent times. So I'm curious to see what Buchanan's going to look like getting back to full health. What is his role going to be with Inter Milan? When he started to drop in form for Canada, I think it correlated with the fact that he did move to Inter. He hardly played. Maybe that's a stretch, but it just seems like he wasn't match sharp, and he had a bit of a frustrating Copa before the injury unfortunately happened. So he's a dangerous player. He's a talent for sure. So I don't know exactly what it's going to look like, but I think all four players have a really good opportunity to push for a starting spot. Miller, Schaffelberg, Ahmed, and Buchanan. It's going to depend on, form, how they're performing for their club, and what Jesse Marsh ultimately wants to do.
Yeah, I mean, all I'd say is we have to see what happens with Buchanan, because for what it's worth, watching Inter a bit this year, they do miss someone like him. And that's why they've been very patient with him. They didn't bring in a replacement when he got injured. They could have easily done that. They see a future for Buchanan, and we'll have to see how quickly he gets dropped right in, right? Like, is it something where they're going to be giving him good looks right away, or if it's going to take a while? I think what's nice is that Ahmed, Schaffelberg, and Miller have bought Buchanan time for Canada, where he doesn't have to come back in November and immediately we need you, go at it. You can ease Buchanan in. You can use him as a super sub. What a luxury that is if you're playing Suriname and you're able to bring Buchanan off the bench for the last 20 minutes, right, in either leg. And then you see the competition. Although I like Ahmed right, Buchanan left, because what I have noticed with Ahmed on the right versus the left is that the right, it just kind of forces him to play a bit quicker. On the left sometimes, because he wants to cut in, we see it sometimes with the Whitecaps, things can kind of slow down, which isn't a bad thing. But what I've loved about him on the right with Canada is just so instinctual. Get the ball, whip it in the box, take guys on, drive. And I think keeping that on the right works. And then with Buchanan's played on the left for Inter. He's played on the left for Bruges. He's played on the left for New England, for Canada. He has some familiarity there. And, maybe that's a potential option to see when everyone's healthy in 2025. And when we're talking about that battle, especially if Ahmed does make true on one of those moves Cloak hinted at in his piece yesterday.
I like that. I like that little hint. Actually, we'll get one more question in, because just very quickly, I'm curious to see what you think. I mentioned it. There's a history of especially Canada and really the United States not taking the Gold Cup that seriously by sending B. Canada usually sends like an A-B mix, but now with the more and more talent we get, our teams have been getting stronger. The U.S. usually just sends a straight B, if not B-C type team. Mexico usually sends like an A-, mostly their best players. This is an interesting point. And I don't really know where I really don't know what I think, because the Gold Cup, like this, SM is saying the Gold Cup will surely be taken seriously because it's the last competition before the World Cup. However, there is a Club World Cup, so any players in CONCACAF may lean towards that. That is true. I think if Canada would send their squad, they would probably had a really good opportunity to win the Gold Cup over the past few editions of it. But it seems like the trend still, even leading up to the 2022, I think, World Cup, if my math is adding up, they still don't always send their best guys. Alex, do you like especially with Nations League as well coming up? Say we get past the quarters, we have an opportunity to win. That's when you see best on best in CONCACAF. Do you think it's more likely we'll see a Jesse Marsh best 23-man roster for Gold Cup, or do you think players will rest, be a part of? I'm not sure which Canadian players are going to be all part of the Club World Cup, but do you think it's going to be an A squad, or do you think it's going to be a B squad?
Yeah, I'm really struggling with it because of the Club World Cup. I just look at the implications of it because I just feel with the event it's going to be.
And it's supposed, sorry, Alex, it's supposed to be the expanded Gold Cup, right?
Well, we'll have to see because there were rumors of it, and now it's kind of looking like there was cold water thrown on that. And I think it's what I imagine is the Club World. Think about it. There's supposed to be a test run for 2025 or for 2026. Sorry, in 2022, you saw this Arab Cup created where they brought a bunch of teams to Qatar. They tested it out. Cool tournament. In this case, they want to test for a 48-team tournament. And think about it. The Club World Cup, it's all Eastern venues in Seattle because they qualified. That's a 32-team tournament. If the Gold Cup is a 16-team tournament, as it's been for the last few editions, that's 48 teams playing in North America at the same time. It's the test event. I think it's going to be 16 again, and maybe they invite a guest nation or two to make up the numbers. So yeah, I think the Club World Cup's taking too much priority. I think they're looking at that. They want to launch this as an event they can do going forward, and I think it'll help if there's stronger teams, if it's as pushed as heavily as possible. And I think that's going to have an effect on the Gold Cup because, I mean, I'm looking right now at the teams that have qualified. Real Madrid and Bayern are there, so it feels like Alphonso Davies is going to be playing at the Club World Cup for one of them. You see Inter Milan's there, so Tejan Buchanan might be unavailable. Porto has qualified, so Stefan Eustachio might be unavailable as well, especially he's been getting a lot more minutes for Porto lately. Like you look at even some of the CONCACAF teams might qualify, so there's the possibility of that. I do worry the Club World Cup's going to gut Canada's possibilities just because losing Davies, Eustachio, Buchanan, and maybe David moves to a Chelsea or one of these teams here and he's unavailable. I know Inter have been looking at him because their striker situation. Maybe he's there with Buchanan. I do think the Club World Cup's going to have a role. So I think for Gold Cup, what I imagine it is you call up as many guys that are available, and then sorry, I got this. It's bad timing. It's been raining all week. As soon as we do one stream, it's sunny in here. It's killing me. But, this Gold Cup, man, I feel like it's going to be as much of an 18, which opens up doors for younger guys if that's the case.
Yeah, sorry to distract you there, Alex. I just Kilo cracking me up, but yeah,
dodge it.
I agree. I mean, I just think history is going to repeat itself. And when I said that, to Aaron's point here, that it's supposed to be the expanded, and where was it? Nations League is in March. Whether it's March, whether it's June, it's the fact that that's maybe the last audition, or that could be the last audition to get the best of CONCACAF together to compete, because it just. Players may want rest. Players may not be available. Alex just gave a list of reasons why the Club World Cup can interfere. And the fact that it could have been more intriguing to have all these guest nations, and if they're not showing up, I just have a feeling it will be that MLS heavy type Canadian team, and the big audition for the World Cup will be Nations League in March, because that's just what I think. But anyways, we don't have a lot of time left on the stream. Sorry, I just got distracted. I know, it's okay. So we'll quickly bring up the women's roster that was dropped for the friendly against Spain. Pretty relaxed, I guess maybe is the word I'm going to use. Roster, Alex. I think the headlines came more from the coaching staff. We'll have maybe 4 or 5 minutes on this. I'll throw it over to you. anything that jumps out to you that you want to talk about in the next 2-3 minutes?
Yeah, I think overall it was a pretty safe roster. Like ultimately from the Olympics, there's only 3 players missing. Desiree Scott hasn't really played. Quinn injured, and the third one is Jade Riviere, who came off recently for United in the game, got injured. So that makes sense. Emma Regan, Olivia Smith slots in. I mean, if Olivia Smith wasn't in this squad after what she's been doing for Liverpool, I don't think anyone would be forgiven Canada for leaving her at home again. So those are the things. But I think other than that, it's pretty boring roster that there were no changes. Some are kind of wondering, especially since the Olympics, like a Deanne Rose, we haven't seen the best of at club level. You know, some other players have struggled a bit to find their form, and you kind of wondered, might they shake things up? But ultimately, you can see this is also a team with an interim staff. Andy Spence is still in for now after the Olympics. We'll see, long term what their plans are for an appointment. Although we do want to shout out Katie Collar, the Whitecaps head coach. Her young Whitecaps team did well in the Champions Cup to go up against some pro sides and put up a good account of themselves, and she gets rewarded with the chance to be an interim assistant on this staff. And Diana Matheson as well called in to help, but ultimately it felt like a very safe roster, which, not a bad thing considering, the state of the team right now, but it is also a bit disappointing because we have to remember this is a new cycle. Now that the Olympics are over, it's 3 years until the next World Cup. You got to start focusing on the next cycle, the next generation. And I do wonder if they could have called in a couple more young faces. For me, I was looking at some of those NCAA players. I know the NCAA is about to play some important games, but also a few of those players I think you're probably looking at for the NSL next year anyway. So I'm not too, that's a whole other discussion, but I would have liked to see a bit more of those younger players.
Do you think the 21 players is a surprise not to bring 23? Like you mentioned, you wanted to see a few other players. What logic do you think went behind that? I would have expected usually at a bare minimum, you'll see 23. Sometimes for a friendly, you'll see up to 26. Is it, is there any reason behind that? Not giving a couple players an extra opportunity to join up with a camp?
Yeah, it's a bit surprising. I mean, right? I guess another excuse for the NCAA players is that it's in Europe. Well, it's not like there's a shortage of players in Europe you could call in. Like, for example, Caroline Kerrer has something like 3 goals in 5 games to start the year with Bayer Leverkusen in the Bundesliga. She's been someone I've been keeping an eye on. There's a couple, youngsters playing in France that we're always seeing. Like a Latifa Abdu was called up last year. Maybe you call her back in based on familiarity. Like, it's not like there's a shortage of players in Europe, right? Like, you didn't even call in Aladu. You didn't call in Chandra Davidson at Benfica. So I think I was a bit surprised not to see 23, especially that there were some European options that could have very easily came in and round. Like, it's not a short bus trip from Benfica to Spain.
You just mentioned 2 players in Portugal.
And they're playing in Spain. So
it's right there. Yeah. So okay. Anyways, I don't really get that either, but it'll be a really good game. I'm excited for it. Spain's an excellent side. This will be a good friendly. I'm always in the mindset where I'd like to see not as many as possible, but at least like the bare minimum. Like this, I expect a 23 player roster. I would like to see 2 other players get an opportunity, especially you see situations like this where bringing in 2 players from Portugal, Alex, would have just made like perfect sense. It's right there, right beside Spain. And it's just great to get players in camp, give them the opportunity. But anyways, yeah, it'll be a good game. It's happening October 25th. In terms of a friendly, I'd say it's a must watch. And Alex, now to end off today's stream, we are going to touch on the CPL. I have a big list of stuff to go through here in the chat, but let's just first show you the table here leading into the final match week 28. Forge leads the way. They're not playing for really anything. You have the Cavs in second, definitely a little bit on the line with Atletico Ottawa looking at them. Nothing on the line for York. And then you have Pacific, Vancouver, Valor competing for that final spot, I believe. And Wanderers are eliminated. So I like the way that Alex in a group chat said to me the other day, it's like, well, I wonder who's going to limp into that 5th and final spot.
That's kind of been what it's been like. Feels like right when someone grabs it, they lose form. But yeah, I mean, based on right now, Pacific has the edge, but Vancouver Valor, they're probably thinking what a story they could be if they can get some results against the two teams that are fighting for top two, right? And that's what's fascinating about this final week is that seeding matters, because right now with the way the format is, there's a genuine difference between first, second, third, fourth, fifth, right? Because like if you're first, you get to host the first game, you have a chance to host the final. Even if you lose the first game, you get another chance. Same with the second place, whereas third, all of a sudden the pressure's on. You need to win the third V4/5 game, then you need to win a semifinal. You need to win a minimum 3 games to win the title. So what's nice is that Ottawa and Cavalry, even though they clinched their playoff spots a while ago now, they're looking like we want that number 2 spot. So that's tough for Valor and Vancouver. Maybe in another year, both the Ottawa and Cavalry are resting a bunch of guys. They want to manage the playoffs. I still think Cavalry will do that because they have a bit of a luxury with being 2 points up. But that could affect the 6v7 race because Valor and Vancouver aren't getting an either game, easy game. Of course, Pacific against Forge. Forge already clinched, but yeah, I think it's going to be cool to see how all these games play out. Unfortunately, Halifax v York, there's nothing at stake there. Although, hey, I'm sure if you're Halifax, you want to give those lovely fans out in Nova Scotia one last win. So even now, they'll have a bit of fire in their belly, even if York might probably be the only team this weekend heavily rotating other than Forge as they get set for the playoffs.
That is fair. And if you guys want to watch these 4 matches, they will all kick off at the same time. They're available for free on the One Soccer YouTube channel. So head over there. You can pick your poison, whichever match you guys want to watch. And I have the permutations here. So stay with me. I'll try to read them very, very slowly to give you guys a bit of an understanding of what is on the line from the matches. You have Atletico Ottawa against Vancouver FC, Halifax against York, Pacific against Forge, Valor against Cavalry. So Cavalry will clinch second spot with a win against Valor. They will also clinch the spot regardless, depending on if the result with Atletico Ottawa and if they do not beat Vancouver FC. Atletico Ottawa can clinch second spot if they beat Vancouver FC and the Cavs do not beat Valor. Cavalry FC will clinch second spot if they win. That's the same one, Armin. Atletico Ottawa. He said the same one again. Okay, Pacific. Pacific FC will clinch 5th and final playoff spot if they beat Forge on Sunday. They will also clinch a spot with a draw if Vancouver FC do not win. And they will also clinch if it's a loss by both Vancouver FC and Valor FC. Vancouver FC will clinch 5th in the final playoff spot with a win against Atletico Ottawa, and Pacific do not beat Forge. And Valor can clinch the 5th and final spot if they beat Cavalry FC, if Vancouver FC do not win at Atletico Ottawa and Pacific FC lose against Forge FC. Hopefully that was crystal clear for all you guys, but there is definitely a lot on the line, and it'll be exciting to have all 4 matches available to Canadians if you guys are looking for something to do. Alex, just out of the match, which, I mean, you might be on one of them for CPL. I think you are. I think you told me you're on Pacific, but if you were giving some advice to the viewer, which one in terms of just something crazy could go on late in the match, could change everything up, which match would you recommend for a neutral to watch?
That's a good question. I'd maybe be looking at Ottawa, Vancouver, because I think Ottawa, they're 2 points behind Cavalry. They need to go for it. They're at home. Ottawa led the league by as much as 8 points at one point. So if they miss out on the top 2 and miss that chance to potentially host a final, to have all that advantage, it's a lot of pressure heading the playoffs. I think they're going to go for it. And Vancouver were literally in a playoff spot for like 21 weeks since week 1. Like they were in a playoff spot and they fell out around week 22, week 23. They're thinking like, all right, let's get that spot back in. They need a win, of course, with Pacific having that edge after their win over York. I think that's probably the two where the match where the two teams are going to go at it the most. And I feel like that can lead to a bit of late drama, especially if Ottawa hears, oh, Cavalry is drawing Valor. Valor at home is going to be tough, especially Valor has a chance to they have a chance at the playoffs. I think it's going to be tough, in Pacific versus Forge, because yes, Forge has already clinched the title and they'll rest guys, but it's also Forge. They'll feel their loss to Ottawa this weekend was kind of embarrassing, and they'll want to ensure they don't finish with back-to-back losses. Forge is going to give a good go at Pacific. So I just know Ottawa, Vancouver, someone will be on the sideline. They'll hear the scores of the other games, and it could lead to a very frenetic finish.
Yeah, I'll say Valor, Cavalry, similar reasons. Both have something to play for. Valor's just an incredible story. At the beginning of the year, I remember Alex and I doing a couple videos being like, or just the predictions in general. I'm pretty sure the majority would have put Valor in dead last 8th place, and they started horribly. So to see the fact that they can actually clinch playoffs here towards the end of the season, I think is an incredible story. And the fans were, have had some frustrating times, but they've been good this year as well, and really want to see some playoff action. So I think there's a lot on the line there. And then the Cavs, similar to Atletico Ottawa, they want to try to host a final. So I'd say, though, leading into that final spot, Alex, it's probably in Pacific's hand, because Valor and Vancouver are playing two teams higher in the table with something on the line as they try to host a final. And hopefully, they're going to have to take care of business against Forge, where Pacific is playing a Forge team that is, to your point, maybe it will probably be heavily rotated, but they'll definitely not want to end off. But I don't know. Would you not say it's probably in Pacific's hand a little bit here, or do you think it's wide open?
I think Pacific does hold the advantage. They're at home. The Forge. Again, we don't know what to expect from Forge, but I think Pacific has the advantage. And although Valor's probably been the most informed team of the bottom 4 recently, they've been picking up points. Although they have late goals have kind of been a bit of a problem. But I think Pacific has the driving edge. Valor feels like they could surprise. Vancouver, I think, are going to be the ones with the most to prove. And maybe that's what they'll need. Away to Ottawa, not many people will be looking at them and thinking they have a chance. And sometimes that seems to be when this Vancouver team is at their best. So while Pacific has an edge, again, that's why this is so exciting. I think that pressure of everything going on all at the same time might rattle some teams. No, they're not used to this. This is new. This is a new experience. And I think that's what's going to be so great about it, is that it's going to give a little bit of a different thing. Whereas last weekend where everything was at different times, Pacific played first. They put the pressure. They won, and you could see how it affected teams. Well, I'd love to see how it's going to affect teams when it's all happening at the same time.
Absolutely. That's all for our stream today, though. If you guys enjoyed it, be sure to drop a like, drop a sub on your way out. Tune in to the One Soccer YouTube channel this weekend for the CPL matches for free, available to you guys. And a big shout out to our sponsors, tonybet, as always. Thank you guys so much for watching. We'll talk to you soon. Cheers, friends.